Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Home and Away, a podcast devoted to all things in and around the world of Sporting Kansas City soccer. I am Drew Vanderpoog, joined once again, as always, by my good friend Cody Welton. This week on the podcast, we have spent the last 2 weeks anxiously twiddling our thumbs, waiting for the official announcement of 2 transfers from Greece, and little did we know that another transaction was brewing that was going to subvert them both from right here in MLS. Sporting Kansas City became the very first club to use the league's new cash for trade system, acquiring Center Forward Dejan Joveljic from the LA Galaxy for $4 million and signing him to a new designated player contract that will keep him in Kansas City for at least the next 3 years. This move came as somewhat of a shock to SKC fans as it went from a somewhat throwaway comment by Tom Bogert on Thursday's Soccerwise episode to all of a sudden a done deal on Saturday evening. There is a lot to like about Joveljic and the concept of SKC locking up a DP number 9 for the foreseeable future, but it does raise some questions about William Agada standing with the team and his future in Kansas City. We did get some more good news just 36 hours later as the reported transfers of Manu Garcia and Shapi Suleimanov from RS Thessaloniki in Greece were officially announced on Monday morning. Sporting Kansas City has now both a DP 9 and 10 signed, laying out reportedly $9 million to do so, as well as adding more attacking depth with Suleimanov. While there is still opportunity to improve the roster further, and some reasonable questions as to how quickly these changes will yield positive results, it is certainly safe to say that Sporting Kansas City is making moves to try to move forward from a fairly dour 2024 season. With the addition of Garcia, we can finally start to look at how the midfield may operate in 2025, including the depth chart and likely roles within the tactical structure. Midfield control was an area of significant concern in 2024, and while the addition of Garcia will certainly help raise the level of the midfield in general, there's still some discussion about how to employ these players effectively to both enable positive chance creation while eliminating opponents' opportunities for attacking transition events. We'll discuss what we expect this midfield to look like and how Peter Vermes and co. may go about addressing what should be a significant area of focus this season. Finally, we'll take a quick look at my favorite MLS release of the year, the updated roster rules. Now, I promise not to spend 20 minutes talking about how to manipulate the rules to maximize the amount of GAM you can make, or what this new 31st slot on the roster means, but we will cover a couple items of note that are of consequence to Sporting KC. But first, we should start, of course, where the news started not long after last week's podcast was posted, which was the news that Dejan Joveljic was apparently being courted by Liga MX Gigantes Tigres, followed by Tom Bogert alluding to the fact that Sporting KC and RSL could potentially be interested in acquiring him via this new cash for players trade mechanism. And then literally 36 hours later, an official announcement being put out that Sporting had completed this transaction. To quote Ron Burgundy, boy, that escalated quickly. To say that we didn't have this on our bingo cards would be putting it pretty mildly. So, Cody, I'm going to leave it to you to hit us with your initial reactions to Sporting Kansas City swooping in and outmaneuvering Tigres, of all teams, to sign a DP striker as its first official transfer of the window.
I was super surprised. I thought that that the comment that was made by Bogert was like a throwaway comment. Like, these are the kind of teams he would expect to be interested in acquiring a new striker, and I mean, it made sense since they just got rid of Polito, but I didn't think it was like seriously an option for the team, and so I was super surprised. It's not really been the club's MO to go after talent from inside the league, and especially utilizing a new mechanism, being the first club to do so was impressive. And I mean, I think it shows a lot of ambition. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more I like it. Just as a move that has a very, I think, low risk, high reward possibility. Because I mean, the dude's a proven MLS player. Even before last year, he had shown the propensity to score goals and get in good positions, and he's still young and just coming into his prime. And so I think that if this was a player that Sporting had signed from some other league across the pond, everybody would have raised eyebrows, and so. The fact that he's from inside the MLS to me is a benefit, because he knows the league, and he knows the team, and I'm really excited to see him play, honestly.
Yeah, usually one of the most difficult things that you have to deal with making some of these significant external transfers is getting that player acclimated to this league, and what the travel situation is like, and all of the different idiosyncrasies of playing 34 games in this league. If you haven't seen it before, it does take some acclimatizing to get used to. And this is not something Joveljic has a problem with. He is obviously quite well aware of the league, so you would expect him to integrate fairly quickly, which is not often the case. So I think that from that perspective, of course, there's some positives, but additionally, it's a known commodity. We know that this guy is a brilliant goal scorer and has been for several years. Realistically, we also understand that he was playing with three of the best chance creators in the league, which certainly can give you the impression that perhaps his production may fall off a little bit, at least in the short term in Kansas City, until that level of chance creation is around him again, or that level of rapport is built with the players around him, that he is able to do that. But I hear a lot of sort of conversation around this team looking to be ambitious about moving forward. And no, this is not a $26 million transfer from a guy from the Champo, which candidly I think is an overpay by Atlanta. But it is Sporting using the mechanisms available to them to get similar value for an amount of money that is reasonable, in my opinion, right?
And as close to a sure thing as you can get, right? It's a wise expenditure of money.
It's much wiser than even Alan Pulido was in 2020, in my opinion, right? Yeah. And for less money, honestly. Yep. And I think that's something to be said about this. I know you and I had this conversation last week, and there was this conversation about bargain hunting and a lot of the things that we've become familiar with Sporting in the past. And realistically, they are going to be bargains hunting a little bit. This is just the nature of the market that we're in and the amount of money they have to spend. They're not spending $25 million in a transfer window. That is not going to be this club. So yes, for them to reload, they've got to be smart about how they do it. But that said, I'll tell you something I told Daniel Sperry earlier today. We were talking about the Latte Loft transfer. That is like, there is no way Atlanta is getting 5 times the return on investment out of Latte Loft that Sporting is getting out of Dejan Joveljic. No fucking way in hell.
Yep.
And so there's something to be said about using these mechanisms, being savvy about using these mechanisms in an appropriate way and making the most of the money that you do have. Yep. And so this isn't as much bargain hunting as it is being smart and being thoughtful about how you spend money while still doing it at a level that is necessary to be competitive.
Yeah, my critique of the deal is more of a macro level critique of just the club's approach to constructing squads just generally, and the sort of focus on low DP, high TAM type players, and that's a choice that they make instead of providing like a solid base and then really going after $10-15 million designated players. I think that they're still trying to sort of play everything sort of like, with everything with a raised floor instead of maybe a raised ceiling, and that's okay. I mean, we've seen this club operate successfully that way in the past, and I think that the other thing that really kind of gave me pause was I kind of expected. Well, first of all, I expected this to be Agada's position to lose, and my assumption now is that since Joveljic has come in and they went out and found him, and also Mason Toy, my assumption is that they see the writing on the wall, or they have a deal in the works for Agada. I'm surprised he's still on the team, because I think that's kind of it just seems to be that he's the odd man out in this, and so, if you look at it under that circumstance, I think it just looks better and better all the time. I mean, because I kind of thought that, like, I mean, just to give you like my if a club is going to spend big money on players, right, the two players to spend it on are the 9 and the 10, because those are the players that put goals in the back of the net, and that's the most difficult thing to do in the game, and that's why all those players cost a lot of money. And I think that, like we've already gone over the positives of Joveljic, and now it's just a matter of can the team provide him chances, and that sort of remains to be seen. And I think that it puts there's a lot of high expectations now coming in on Manu, because he is that's like the key, right? Like, we know Joveljic is a good player. We know what Daniel Shalhoub can do with the right players around him. We know what Eric Tommy can do with the right players around him, and if he's put in the right situation. And so really, the unknown component in all of this right now is Manu, and whether Peter Vermes is going to be able to construct a game model that'll provide chances for Joveljic that it was not able to provide for Polito.
Yeah. Well, first thing, man, that's a lot. There's a lot. I have a lot of thoughts on everything you said there, because there's about 4 different key points that I think need to be addressed. Let's start with the roster building methodology, because I do think that this is a place where you and I differ a little bit in our opinion of how this is going. I do think some of this is situational and dependent upon availability. I think Dejan Joveljic is not available for $4 million next year, right? So this is a move you make a little bit as and this is the nature of MLS and the pools that you're playing in financially. You can't just decide next summer, I need a 9 XYZ, type in however many 9s and pay for them, right? Like, that's not how this team is operating. So I think there is a little bit of a timing thing related to why they made this move now. They didn't have to, but they did. But I would push back a little bit on the concept of building a base first and then adding big DPs on top of it. I think that's actually the inverse of how it should be done. I actually like the way that Sporting is going about doing this, because I think inherently, especially again in the pool that Sporting Kansas City is playing in, $5 million, $8 million mid to high 7-digit transfer fee players, they are going to be really good players for MLS. Mm-hmm. They are going to have limitations. So you are getting players that hopefully fit your game model, hopefully fit your style of play, but you can't sort of design them in a lab the way that you want them to and then just go buy them, because that if you could do that, you would just pay for any player you wanted, right? So you find one that fits the majority of them, you get them in, and you get that foundation of your marquee players that are going to be, responsible for ostensibly for the majority of your scoring load, or creating opportunities for your scoring load. You get those in place, and you figure out what things do I need to add on top of that to maximize these guys? Where are the areas that I need? What is exactly the profile of exactly the right type of the TAM winger I need right next to this guy to really make him fly? I think that it's easier for them at that point to go find a TAM winger with that one or two traits that will just make this guy work and fill in those spots, then once you have that base and see what's working, then it is necessarily to build out something and then try to plug in the perfect DP into it. I mean, ideally, right, any DP would make a team better, but we know that's not the case. We know that Chicago Fire signed Hugo Kuipers, and it didn't do shit for them.
Yeah,
because he didn't have any of the stuff around him to enable him, right? And so, and the setup of the team was not in any way useful for making him successful. And now Greg Berhalter's having to redo a lot of that in order to enable him to be successful. I think by getting that DP number 9, DP number 10, and they do in profile make sense together, right? Like if you look at the two types of players they make a lot of sense together. You figure out how those guys interact with each other and figure out what sauce you need to pour on top of it to take it to that top level. So that for me, I'm kind of in the opposite point of view you are in that. I don't think you add the DP at the end. I think that they are the foundation for what you're building.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and I think it's just differing opinions, right? I mean, I like I think the big problem with building your system around your DP is that, you know, especially if you don't have a competent backup, that player gets injured, and you know you could be screwed for a whole season. And so, but there are downfalls to the other.
You don't think the Galaxy are going to be fucked without Ricky Puig?
I don't know, man. We'll see.
Well, I mean, they mortgaged the future. So that like the thing about the Galaxy is it wasn't just Puig. It's that they had 4 other max TAM midfielders.
Yeah.
that could play as well. That they borrowed Gam from this year, and they did a lot of stuff to win. Hey, the star's on their shirt forever, right? So
absolutely,
you do what
that's
you
what
need
it's
to
about.
Do. You do what you need to do, and yeah, it's going to be painful for them this year, and it's part of the reason why Sporting Kansas City was able to acquire Joveljic, because the Galaxy were in such a way about their salary cap.
It's an unfair comparison though, because you know, yes, they lose Puig, but they've got Marco Reus and they've got Diego Fagundes, and you know, both of those players are players who could deputize in that role. Like if
those guys are completely different players than Ricky
Puig. Sure. No one is like Ricky Puig, right? But the thing is that you know, if let's say if Manu is that DP level player, there's nobody to fill that space if he goes down. And so
they have depth problems in general.
Right.
But
it's a long term. Like I said, it's a macro. My critiques were macro critiques anyway, and this is the first step in a long series of steps to rebuild the team. So I totally concede that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the first person to admit that they have a significant depth problem. You put up a depth chart, we're going to talk about it in a little bit. It's lean. I mean, if anybody who watched the preseason game that happened right before we started recording this, I mean, they had 4 starters unavailable, and it was... It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. Joveljic even played the first half hour, and there's a lot of like players in weird positions, and a lot of Zoran Basong playing on the left-sided 8-10 role. So there was just they have depth problems. I'll be the first person to admit that, and they do need to make some more signings, and they do need to add quality depth. Like I think that is something, but I think that can come later. Right.
Sure.
I think they're not trying to win MLS Cup this year. I mean, they'll tell you differently, but I mean, inside the building, they understand their goals are not trophies this year. The goals are creating a basis for competence that they can build on. And I think that there are going to be opportunities for them to continue to do that. And they could go sign a third DP at some point if they want to as well. So like there are opportunities for them to make those adjustments. And I think it was very clear that there was a black hole in midfield when it came to passing quality.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't think anyone would debate that. They went out and got a guy, and they made it clear from the middle of last year that it was their prime priority to go get this guy. And they went and they made that happen. I think Joveljic was the third domino, pour one out for extra time, domino, of them getting out from Alan Pulido to going through this rebuild to him being available because of the Galaxy's cap situation. I think you put all of those things together and then you jump on it because you can. And so I think that they have 3 years, hopefully, of these two guys, barring a big transfer offer coming in or something along those lines. 3 years of these guys to really, build from and create a level of competence from that I think is going to be useful. You touched on William Agada. I think that it is important that we discuss this topic because from a stats perspective, it's hard to separate those two guys that much, right? I mean, XG per 90, goals per 90, goal contributions per 90, expected goal contributions per 90. Willie actually has a little bit better passing numbers. I think that's more related to game, system and game state than anything else.
Look, for Sporting Kansas City, I think their passing numbers are juiced almost.
They pass sideways and backwards so much that you cannot take their passing numbers that seriously.
Absolutely.
But still, if that's the Pam from The Office meme, and they're the same picture when you put the two FD ref charts on top of each other. I will say a couple things. One, I do believe with that argument, this is a little bit of another extra time memorial. Are you watching the games or are you just looking at the stats? Because I don't think if you watch Dejan Joveljic play soccer and watch William Agada play soccer, you think that they are equivalent players. I just don't think that that's true. That said, when you look at the potential actual upgrade in production that you think you're going to receive from these two players, it does seem like an unnecessary investment on the face of it, right? Why wouldn't I invest those dollars elsewhere in the roster where I'm going to get a much higher uplift in goal production than I would from Agada to Joveljic? Which I think is a reasonable question to ask, and I think it goes back to your original statement, which is and I don't want to get into conspiracy theories or rumor mill stuff or any kind of thing, but I mean, the only thing I can look at is William Agada is out of contract at the end of this season. We've heard nothing about a contract extension of any kind, and we've certainly not heard any type of talk about this is our guy for the future.
Right.
And there could be any number of reasons that is the case, but it certainly does not feel like on the basis of this signing, you signed Mason Toye, you signed Dejan Joveljic, you obviously there was some reason to believe that William Agada was not going to be it long term.
You haven't heard about interest from other leagues in Agada.
He did get that it has been reported. I think Shades of Blue Guys talked about it. We've heard it as well that there was apparently there was an offer for him at some point last season, and I think Thad talked about it. I don't know exactly from where, but there was apparently an offer of some kind for him last season. Sporting wasn't really ready to accept it. He wasn't really ready to go, so it didn't really go beyond that point. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not gonna trade an innuendo. I've heard a lot of innuendo when it comes to him ever since this transfer happened, and I'm not gonna trade in it. But what I will say is that there's obviously reason to believe that he is not long for Kansas City if you make these moves, and that must have been brewing for some time. Otherwise, they don't make this signing.
The fit just has never seemed to quite line up, right? Like you would think that it would, given his numbers, and it just there's something that's not.
He's a data analyst dream.
The vibes aren't right.
Yeah, he's a data analyst dream for sure. If you look at that kind of stuff, it is. But he's also a volume shooter. You know what I mean? We've discussed that quite a bit. You're never going to see William Agada drastically overperform his expected goals. That's just not going to be a thing. I think that just for whatever reason, you've never felt like he was ever the first choice player.
Right.
Even when Alan Polito's corpse was standing in the midfield, you like never really got the feeling that they were really fully behind William Agada,
Yeah.
right? And so I don't know that for whatever reason it doesn't seem to be moving in a positive direction for him in Kansas City, and maybe this gives them the opportunity to find a good place for him that he's happy with, that they're happy with, and they can move on, and it's just another circumstance of players that were on this roster the last several years when the team hasn't been very good we're starting to just see them move away, and
Yeah.
and in some sense that might be the right thing for the club to be doing.
Well, and speaking of Alan Polito, Joveljic is obviously definitely an upgrade on Alan Polito, but I think more to that in looking at how they were attempting to use Polito last year. I think I don't think they're going to try and keep doing that, playing that kind of game model or that kind of system. But if you were going to do that, Joveljic is, I think, a better fit for that than
Agada probably, but I still don't want Joveljic used in that way.
No,
I don't think that is the most
not at all.
effective way to use him. His off ball movement and his movement in the box is so good that
Right.
you're really making a poor choice of where
Yep.
to put him on the field if you're putting him 25 yards away from goal. Like that's just
Totally
not,
agree.
that is not, he is such a sniper inside the 18 that there is no fucking way I want him spending much time outside of it.
Yeah, you say that, but
Sure.
wait till you see it happen, and then
but some of that is going to be related to. I mean, I saw this a little bit in the preseason game. Some of this is personnel related. I got to be honest with you. It's personnel related. These guys it's very easy. Like I saw Eric Tommy start doing the thing where he backed up and started dribbling around the top of the box. I'm like, and there's just this line of players like waiting for a pass up there. And I'm like, God damn it. Like,
here we go again.
Like, no, but it was because of Eric Tomley doing a recycled dribble like he always does in that circumstance. So I think that we're going to start seeing, I'm hopeful with some changes in personnel, we're going to start seeing some more incisive play into the 18, which I think is more important than anything else.
Yeah,
You touched on another thing that you had texted to me when a lot of this went down, and it was related to, bringing in Manu Garcia ostensibly to be this chance creator for Joveljic to, bury a bunch of chances from. And you said, hey, that's a lot to put on a guy you just signed who's never been here. Yeah, but he's your DP number 10.
Right.
Who else are we expecting to do this? If
Nobody
it's not
on
him.
the squad right now.
Well, but seriously, if you sign a DP number 10, it is his fucking job to do this. Yes, I have high expectations of him. I do, because when you spend $5 million to bring him here and to be the primary chance creator in this midfield, he has to deliver. And if he doesn't, there's going to be problems, and there should be. Right. Like, and that's, it's a problem with scouting. It's a problem with coaching. It's a problem with whatever. But if it doesn't work out, like, yeah, that's a problem. It's a big problem. And so, yes, I do have high expectations of him to be able to feed Joveljic the ball effectively so he can put it in the goal. I do also think that the system is fairly good at providing assists from the wings. And Joveljic obviously is very good at receiving assists from the wings. Yep. So is obviously Sporting does not have Peck and Paintsel, 100%. I'm not trying to compare the guys they have to that, but I do also think we know that Shallowy is a good chance creator from the wing. Like he racks up assists quite often from that position.
Yep.
And I think with a good midfielder on his side, with his guy Logan and Denbei behind him, I think we've discussed this several times. Yeah. I think there's a rising tide that's going to lift all boats when it comes to this situation that I think will allow Joveljic to be effective. Is he going to be scoring, 21 goals in all comps? Maybe not, right? Like, but I think it's a failure if it's not mid double digits,
sure.
Honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is I understand what you're saying. It's like, who's going to feed him these chances? Manu Garcia better be feeding him these chances, or what are we doing here?
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. So Manu Garcia, Shapi Suleimanov, both are signed as well. We're looking at, I think, what, 25 on the roster at this point? Although now with the new rules, they can have 31. So um, I think we're probably gonna, and I'm joking. Like the 31st is a fake. It's basically a fake roster slot that I want to promise you I'm not going to get into details of today. But the they have 5 potential slots available on the roster. Most of them could be senior roster spots. It kind of depends on what they do with U22s and what model they choose and it's and whatnot. But I think we're expecting, some backups like at the center back position and the right back position, and ostensibly those might come from the trialists in camp. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I don't think we're hearing a whole lot of them trying to bring someone in at those positions of significance. And candidly, I don't know that the backup right back or the fifth center back should be someone you're spending a bunch of money on, right?
Totally agree.
I think that gets them up to about 27, and that's probably where they'll go into the season, honestly, right? With some opportunities to add in the summer. That's kind of the feeling I get.
Yeah, I think that that's probably right on. It seems like they've got decent depth on the front line. Between Shallowy, Afrifa, Vargas, Joveljic, Toy, Agada, Tommy, Suleimanov. I mean, there's a lot of players to fill those 3 slots. I think that I would kind of like to see them add some midfield depth, but it looks like maybe Bartlett is gonna, might be good enough to actually see time. So if that's the case, I'm all for that. So I mean, that puts us with Manu, Tommy, possibly, and Basong, Davis, Memo, at playing the one of the dual 8 positions, and probably Radia and Bartlett at the number 6, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think there's space in there to add depth if the right option comes along. But I think that there's enough to get going in there.
Yeah, I mean, we still haven't heard much from the offer that was reportedly lodged for Brian Oko, the Swiss center back that was born in Houston, so he doesn't take up an international slot. I I had heard from Bogert after that original report that it was possibly a loan offer, not a purchase offer, which would make a lot more sense given his limited playing time. So loan with a purchase option would make a lot more sense compared to making an actual transfer offer for a guy who's, barely played in the second division of Austria the last couple of years due to injuries and whatnot. So I think that, maybe we'll see some things like that, but I think it's going to be on the margins like that, right? Where so maybe some high upside, sort of easy to get in for cheap kind of options as they present themselves. But I don't see a whole lot. I mean, central midfield is definitely an area where some depth could be useful, or some more quality depth could be useful.
Where does the team stand on their U22 players right now?
Technically, they only have 2.
Okay.
Which would still be in Denbei and Volader. I think Jake Davis certainly could be classified as a U22 depending on what the size of his new contract is.
Yeah.
I don't know how big it is. And so that will be instructive to see if he is, if he's listed as a U22, because he could be. He signed that deal before he turned 22, and it is his second contract, and he's a homegrown, so he could be potentially classified as a U22. But I don't know. I mean, it really depends on how much. If he's making $500,000-600,000, you probably want to put him as a U22 to limit his cap charge, and you don't have to use a bunch of GAM to buy him down. If he's $300,000, maybe it's not that important. So, that's potential that they could do that. Otherwise, they would have 2 slots open. And in fairness too, both in Denbei and Volader, they could take off U22 status and just take their salary
Right.
against the cap this year if they wanted to, because they're on their option years. So that you're talking 350 to 400 grand. It easily absorbable with the amount of GAM they have left over. So they
Yeah.
could go pretty ham on U22s, maybe in the summer if they wanted to, or something along those lines. It's really, they've got options when it comes to that. I think they're classified as U22s now because they have been, and that's just, we haven't seen from the roster freeze how they're going to allocate these positions.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I think that I'm looking at this depth chart as you've laid out, and I'm in agreement with the majority of it. I don't know what your color codes mean, but no one else is looking at it, so it doesn't matter what the color codes mean.
The color codes were a holdover from a previous spreadsheet depth chart.
Okay, so irrelevant color coding. Like I said, and it's extremely irrelevant for everyone listening who can't see it. But you look at this and you go, okay, I could see how they could go into the season this way.
Yeah.
But man, you can also see how this is just window one of a 3-window rebuild, right?
Absolutely.
There's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
There is, and that is something I talked about today with the guys at Soccerwise. So everybody pay attention to your Soccerwise feed, because you might hear somebody on the Sporting Kansas City preview episode. But something that, is fairly significant that we've been talking about for a couple of weeks is basically the whole back line, including Radoja, is under contract through this year.
Yeah.
And then all of those contracts free up, and there's an opportunity to make some fairly significant changes, where some probably need to be made, in quality, but also in central midfield. Like, for as yeoman of a job as Zoran Basong's been doing,
he's not it.
If you're relying on Zoran Basong regularly to play meaningful minutes in your central midfield in MLS, that's generally not ideal, right? Yeah. You should be relying on players with more abilities than he has. And I think, we can enjoy Zoran Basong and all the things that he offers, including his locker room presence and his personality and all the things that we like. And I even watching the preseason game today, he did have moments that I like, had some I did not like. He cannot be, he's kind of like Robert Castellanos last year. If you're relying on him significantly to contribute to your MLS team, it's probably not very good. Right. And I think that's something we need to be honest with ourselves about regarding squad depth and meaningful quality squad depth. I love Memo Rodriguez. The guy hits the best set piece ball I've seen since Benny Feilhaber or Graham Zusi, really, right? But that's another player that has significant limitations, and you should not be relying on regularly in this league if you're going to be successful. And Sporting is one twisted ankle away from one of those two playing a lot. Yeah,
absolutely.
So
playing a lot out of position at the number 6, honestly.
Potentially, yeah. I do think you're right about Bartlett. I think Bartlett is in a position where he is likely to get some opportunities to play this year, and that's probably good, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
The team needs to be better about that. They need to be bringing 19-year-old homegrowns into positions to learn. It's not something they've been successful at doing in the past. So I think it is an area that they can be more aggressive about providing minutes to. But otherwise it's Memo playing the 6.
Yeah. Which is, he did okay, but that's not what you want. Like, that's not a long-term plan. I mean, it really, like, what we're worried about is if Radia goes down, the double pivot comes back. Like that, that's probably what has to happen. And that's just, I do think that has its own downstream impacts. Absolutely.
One thing I did want to highlight, because I think it's important as we talk about the depth and we talk about making the midfield effective, is something that you had brought up a couple weeks ago when we talked about the likely tactical structure, control progression shape, etc. We originally sort of expected that it would be Kyrie Shelton staying home alongside the center backs and providing additional cover, and in that sort of 3-2-5, 3-1-6 sort of look that they often employ in possession. And then you had suggested potentially what could happen is Radia drops back in between the center backs. I saw a lot of that in the preseason game. Both Radia and Bartlett were doing it. So it wasn't just a personnel thing.
Soccer clairvoyant, man. What can I say?
But it does make sense. I mean, Bartlett as well can play center back. I mean, his brother is the starting central center back in the back three for DC United. Like it is a position that he is capable of playing, but so pushing him back in between those in possession makes sense. Radoja not ranging is something I like, right? Like right. Keeping the game in front of him is something that helps eliminate some of his issues, because candidly, this team was a freaking interstate highway through the midfield most of last season, and they've got to figure out a way to fix that problem. And I think this might be a way to help solidify that a little bit.
Well, my thinking when I was considering it, my thinking was that absolutely, but also he's not really an additive player in the attacking third at all, right? I mean, he doesn't bring very much to the attack. He's although he's shown he can hit like the long switch and that kind of thing, he doesn't do it very often. And same thing with, breaking lines or through balls. He's not that creative of a passer, especially playing balls into the box. And so why have him move forward at all into the attack? Why not just keep him back between the center backs and give a little bit more cover back there, and I think that is I think maybe better suits his skill set, and also allows Kyrie Shelton and Ndenbe both to move forward and participate in the attack. And I think both of those guys are much more involved and much better attackers than Radia is.
I think they're also much more effective counter pressers. So
absolutely.
When they are wide and up against those lines and high, if there is a turnover, they can crash and recover the ball a lot more quickly from that possession, from that shape as well. Whereas if Shelton is deep along the center back line, he's offering you nothing in that regard, because he's back there the whole time. And then you've also got Radia in central midfield doing not much in that regard. And so that's where that you get gappy between your pressure line and your defensive line, and you end up with guys running downhill at you. So I think that there are some downstream impacts that can be positive regarding how this team goes about. I did think it was interesting you were talking, and this is obviously one example from one preseason scrimmage I just watched, but Radia was playing a lot deeper. He actually did get he actually dropped a really nice sort of diagonal cross from deep across to the back edge of the box that Jake Davis tried to one-time home. That was pretty nice, actually. Yeah. It was a good sort of recycle around that he just sort of chipped, like a little curling chip towards the back post. So there is stuff in there, but again, he did that from way deeper than we have historically seen, like Ilie post up, right? Mm-hmm. Where Ilie would post up almost at the top of the D. Yeah. and do things, and he was obviously significantly deeper than that. The other thing I noticed
if he can hit that ball from deeper, that's really great. Like if he can do that on a regular basis, I mean that's money, right?
But it's similar to what you'd see a center back do from that position in possession, mm-hmm. right? So like it's not like he's still along that center back line. Mm-hmm. And I also felt like they were much more effective in maintaining a back line that way too. One of the mm-hmm. things that we really seem to they seem to struggle with that sort of stay-at-home right back situation was maintaining their line for the offside trap. I don't know if you remember this, but Volater would get out of position a lot, and I don't know what the situation was, but part of it is the middle of that line is now like Rosero or somebody like that. I think when you pull a 6 back into that role, they're much better at organizing it for whatever reason. And I think, typically center backs are used to splitting out sort of even with the lines of the 18-yard box. And when you have them offset, it creates. I think for whatever reason it was not as successful. And what I was seeing today is they were much more successful in maintaining their line. They were holding players offside a lot. It looked more competent. Now, part of it is it's a preseason match. It's doesn't mean a whole lot of anything, and they've been practicing probably a lot of this for the last 2.5 weeks. So I'm sure that has a lot to do with all of it. But I do think, without reading too much into the game, I do think it was worthwhile to discuss the 6 dropping back in between the center backs and both fullbacks going high and wide, because that is a more traditional Peter Vermes sort of style of using fullbacks than we had seen basically since Graham Zusi moved into that role.
Would you say he was even with the other center backs, or more advanced than them, or behind them?
Even.
Okay.
There was a line of 3 that he was the center of. Obviously there's, set pieces and transition events and whatnot, and, transitioning to attack, and, there's some movement that happens, but you would see what I would also see from that is that there was aggressive pressure coming from one of that line of 3. If the pressure trigger was there, Jansen Miller specifically, I saw in a couple circumstances, would get 10 to 12 yards high of that line to on a pressure trigger to try and win a duel and get the ball back. So
ostensibly that's one of the benefits of having a 3-man back line, is you can do that kind of thing. You can have someone step out and really pressure while the other 2 provide cover. It didn't really work that great last year, but there are reasons for that.
and I got to be honest, Robert Volliter is not good at winning defensive duels.
No, he's not.
And there were a number of them that he whiffed on in this game as well. And so I have some concerns. I think I said this in the chat. I was like, if Jansen Miller and Robert Volliter are starting center back pairing for the year, it's going to be a long season. And that was more of a shot at Robert Volliter than it was at Jansen Miller, to be completely honest. Obviously we're not expecting that. And it doesn't seem like any of the quote unquote injuries are significant. It's just preseason, and there's no reason to push players who have any type of tweak. Right. It's preseason. So, for me, what I found more interesting were the tactical shapes. And one of them was very, very specifically that back 3, with it being the 6 in the middle of it, as opposed to the tucked in right back.
Interesting. I can't wait.
Please give us some real games to talk about.
I know. I'm just so excited to nerd out a little bit.
For the love of God, can we have some actual games to talk about? So the other part that I wanted to discuss regarding midfield stability is also, if you look at that 3-2-5, now all of a sudden your 2-8s can be a little deeper.
Yeah.
Your 8 and your 10, they can be a little bit deeper, because that is your 3-2-5 build out shape, right? Your 3, and
so
also
you
your
that,
3-2-5 counter pressure shape.
You can do that, or you can tuck, Shelton into play one of the 2s. Like you could have Shelton and Davis play a 2, and that allows the other.
You get a little asymmetrical at that point as far as the rotations. But sure. I think what I found just more interesting than anything, specifically with I'm viewing one game in preseason, but what I found interesting about it was that their counter pressure and the rest defensive posture was very solid as a result of that. The personnel accomplishing the counter pressure triggers and getting turnovers and all that stuff, separate conversation for sure. But the structure by which they were meant to have rest defensive posture and counter pressure triggers and trying to win the ball back looked good. Like I liked the structure of it. And I think it will be effective. I think you're going to see rotation throughout those roles, right? Like that is the nature of any types of tactical system. Players are going to move in and out of zones, and other players are going to have to check into different ones, right? Like, I mean, that's natural. But what I thought was, because the reason I bring this up is what they had a significant problem with was stopping attacking transition, getting past their midfield line. Like, it was a problem. And they didn't have as much of a problem with this against New York City in this game specifically. And again, it's one game, but it's more me looking at the structure by which they had the right type of rest defensive posture to eliminate those things from happening. As well as being aggressive about trying to regain the ball and go right back downhill, which is something we've heard from Vermees that they're trying to do. Like, success in those duels, another conversation entirely, but the intent and what they're trying to accomplish, it looks feasible to me. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I think the success thing, I think is obviously personnel dependent, and also dependent upon having a group of players who, a group of starters who have the chance to start together for a run of games. And so I would assume that stuff will start to take care of itself. And it is it's heartening that they look defensively sound today, because that's, I think that we can all agree that that's the biggest place where they need to show some immediate improvement.
Yeah. And I want to be really clear, defensively sound in the fact that the structure was set up in a good way for them to be effective at maintaining defensive control. How well each player executed it in every moment is a preseason game. Okay. So yeah, that was not, and it's a preseason game where a bunch of the guys playing will not play very many minutes this year, or if they do, there's a problem. So from that perspective, I want to be careful about like what the actual performance was. I'm more looking at what the ideas are and what's being asked of the players, and trying to sort of play that out towards what a starting lineup might look like. And I think that from that perspective, I have some level of optimism that they'll be able to maintain some level of control, even without signing anybody really new defensively.
Well, I mean, that's good, because they need that. I mean, they really need the ability to provide some defensive control in some games, because their ability to control games via possession has kind of evaporated over the last few years. And so they need something else in order to sort of be able to get themselves straightened out during games.
That was an interesting part about how they played that I really took away, was that they are willing to possess the ball along the back line and wait for their moment to break pressure and really move it around quite a bit to do that. And Pulskamp was fairly solid with his feet doing that. So I did like that for the most part. But as soon as they break that front line of pressure and the midfielders, whoever's on that midfield line, so sometimes it's the fullback in the 2/8 or whoever, right? As soon as they break that line, they are going right to goal, like right downhill. There is not much intent to pass it around from there. Now, do some guys have some bad habits about recycling the ball once they get to the 18? Yeah, that still exists. But there were also a number of circumstances, especially when Joveljic was still in, where significant chances were created. So I think that I understand more clearly what Vermees was alluding to when people ask, like, what his tactical shape is going to look like, and will they try to possess the ball more effectively, et cetera, right? Like, it's been a high possession percentage team, and he sort of bristled at, like, I don't really care about possession percentage, blah, blah, blah. I think that he said it's like sometimes we will try to control the ball, but we also need to be thoughtful about attacking, and you can see that in practice where they are much more direct once they break that first line of pressure, which is not totally dissimilar to what we discussed last week with Iraola, and as soon as you see space, attack it, right?
Right.
And it's not the same. I'm not going to try to say it's the same, but the concept of being aggressive and going vertically once you break a line of pressure and you have your opponent retreating is seems to be something they're focusing on.
Exciting.
Yay.
Let's get it going.
Okay. What else? Is there anything else about these acquisitions that you wanted to make sure we covered?
I mean, I don't think so. For me, a lot of it is just we're sort of in kind of wait and see mode, right? It's just a matter of seeing how soon the new signings can get in and acclimated and on the field, and then after that, how soon that they can start to make an impact. And I think that especially for designated players, we should expect that to happen as soon as possible. And even for our boy Shappy, I think he should be ready to contribute pretty quickly. I mean, these are guys who are coming from the middle of their season, and so there shouldn't be they shouldn't need much of an on ramp. And so I think it's reasonable for fans to expect to see these new players contributing very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, Joveljic played the first half hour of his, he's been on the team for what, 3 days, and he
Yeah,
played the first half hour of this game today. So it's obvious that Vermees wants to get him integrated as quickly as possible. Of course, why wouldn't you? This is DP
yeah,
number 9. You want to get him
absolutely.
in. Similar with Manu. Shabi, I think there's going to be opportunities to maybe ease him in a little bit more, given that it appears that Shallowy and Tommy are going to be the wingers.
Yeah,
Um,
makes sense.
it was of somewhat of note today that they had them flipped. Tommy was playing on the left and Shallowy was playing on the right. And Shallowy was still able to combine very well with Joveljic from that side. So at least on one significant chance. So, and I did like some stuff I saw from Tommy as well. So I don't know if that's going to be a thing or if that's just something they were looking at today. Right. But I think that I think Shoppy's going to add some additional quality depth at the attacking wing position, which is something that is valuable.
And
Obviously,
and so it's not just depth; it's also experience. I mean, he's a what 25-year-old professional player, and
he's been
that's
playing for
not
2 years with Manu Garcia as well,
right,
so
and
that's a
that's not
player that he knows as
yeah.
well.
Neither Vargas or Afrifa have that, and so they have different skills, obviously, but so he does bring something a little bit different to the table.
Right. Yeah, I have no idea of how to project his abilities in MLS, but I don't think anybody does. I mean, in fairness, we don't know really how to project Manu Garcia. Even if both Tom Bogert and I are irrationally high on him, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is definitely gonna pan out in an amazing way. I do have optimism that it will. But yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to get these guys in here, and it might take a minute for them to develop rapport. And I think that's the other kind of part of this that where I'm okay with them being here now and developing that rapport, so that in 2026 you're looking at a team that is fairly together, and you can pour a little sauce on top and make them very good, right? And hopefully that is the way that the team is looking to go about doing it.
Totally agree.
Okay, let's move into potpourri time. My favorite time of year. The roster rules have been released.
Mm, so
Can you
exciting.
sense the excitement when that freaking lawyer posts his multi tweet skeet thread of all of the red lines of the versioning that he goes through? He like looks at the previous year and this year, and it's like he's got the version changes and highlights all the different pieces of it. Just, man, gets you excited, doesn't it? Anyway, I know literally no one other than me and about 4 other people care about this stuff, so I'm not going to bore you with all of it. Much of it is stuff we've discussed about already. It's just more specifics related to how these mechanisms work. I think the couple things of note specific to Sporting Kansas City are, one, this cash for trades model. If you sign a player with cash within MLS and you designate them as a DP as part of that transaction, they have to remain a DP for the entirety of their guaranteed contract. So even if you have, you want to call them a DP for cap reasons this year to save some GAM, as soon as you call them a DP, they have to be a DP. Now, I think with Joveljic, it doesn't matter. Like, I think with his comp and his transfer, or the amount of money they spent, his cap charge is going to be well in excess of the TAM max anyway. So it doesn't really matter, but that was one item of note from this release, is this: any designation that you give to a player as part of this cash for trades thing has to remain with the player for that guaranteed term of their contract. What else? I mean, there's a lot of really nerdy things about how you can create GAM from transfer fees and all kinds of other stuff that literally no one else cares about. But I will say this, with the exception of one really small thing that I'm working with a couple guys to research the answer to right now. They did a fairly good job of eliminating some ambiguity in the rules for the people like us that really get, like us, like me and other people I know that are into this. Not me, not Cody. I know Cody is not one of these people. But for those of us that do like to really nerd out on these rules and all the little machinations and how they work, they did a really good job of eliminating some confusion based on the language that was posted online. So they clarified a lot of things and were very specific about a number of things to really help people understand better what all these are. Because I think one of the things that a lot of people didn't understand was that they viewed everything that was posted on that website as a black and white rule book, when in reality what it was a sort of common language interpretation of the rule book. And as a result, people were taking things fairly literally that shouldn't have been. And they have, MLS being they have clarified a lot of that, which I think is good.
I feel like there's been like recently, like within the last 6 months, there's been a shift towards maybe less opacity in and in interest of like serving the sickos, right? Like instead of saying, our rules are so inane and complicated that it's only a lawyer can understand it. Instead of like hiding behind that, you embrace that and let nerds like you, Drew, make your little spreadsheets and do your little thing, and that becomes its own sort of like ecosystem and style of fandom. And I think that it like it's a very sort of NBA thing, right? Like, a lot of NBA nerds get into that kind of thing, and it's not my, like you said, it's not really my thing. But I think that it's great that it just seems like there's been a change and maybe the vibe around the whole thing, where it does seem to be, these are the things that we're doing. Play around with it and have fun with it.
There's certainly, the league seems to be trying to create a little bit more transparency in certain things, right? The GAM release at the beginning of, or about a month or two ago, like telling everyone how much GAM there was, releasing the roster profiles that show what every single player's designation is, doing that twice last year and updating it, right? MLSPA releasing salaries. Like, there's a lot going on here that does allow nerds like me to play at-home GM if you want to, and also spend an inordinate amount of time on the Soccerwise Discord arguing the minutiae of how all of these mechanisms work and whether or not you can do this or that or something else. There is interest in it, and like you said, the NBA is a perfect example of it. I will say this: I am way into these weeds about MLS. I am not about the NBA. When these guys start firing up the trade machine and like show like these 5-way trades, I'm like, I have no concept of why this works or how it works. But there are people, to your point, that are extremely interested in that kind of thing, and there is value in nurturing that at some level, right? I don't think it should ever be that that significant of a thing to where you're spending you and I or someone I'm talking to, I'm trying to explain these things to, because it shouldn't be. For me, I like knowing it, because when someone asks me, why don't we sign this guy, I can be like, because we can't.
Right.
And I can just say that these MLS salary cap rules don't allow it. And I can feel confident in that, right? And I have the context by which, and it did help us last year as well for the listeners of this podcast, when people were going, why aren't we signing a DP in this, or why aren't we being more aggressive about this or that? Because they couldn't. Yeah. Right. And I was very clear about the limited amount of allocation money they had, how they had spent themselves into a pretty bad way with contracts on some players that probably shouldn't have been given, that put them in a bad place. And we heard Mike Burns say it at the end of the year. It's like, man, we were able to really create some flexibility by moving on from some of these. And honestly, there were some more I'd like to have been able to move on from if I could. And I think that context is helpful. I think for understanding the current state of the team as we're talking about this rebuild, which is obviously very important to fans. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that there should be also a limit to it, or we definitely need to have our own discussion forum.
You can limit yourself, Drew. You know that. Like, you don't have to. Okay.
I know. I'm not. How much have I nerded out about any of these mechanisms? I haven't. No, you haven't. About the details of any of them.
You've been so restrained. I'm really impressed.
I have intentionally not gotten too deep on it. There are about 4 people that listen to this podcast that care about it, and we can talk about it on the Discord. All right, and they generally do, so it's all good. The last thing, as a reminder to join the Home and Away Discord and participate in the conversation, link is in the show notes. There was a Discord user that came up with the absolute best description for these signings from Aris. Did you see this? He said Sporting Kansas City signed their first and second Thessalonians.
Oh yes, I saw that. That's quite good.
Yeah. That's probably the best description I've heard of that. One thing to look for. There's more preseason games if you want to stream them, dude. I guess, when do we get? We'll get back together before the club gets back here. And then there's a home and away derby tomorrow. Leagues Cup semifinal, or League Cup, not Leagues. Leagues Cup is the thing that Sporting's not playing in this year.
Right.
The League Cup is what Tottenham and Liverpool are playing in tomorrow. I don't know. I have no expectation. The Tottenham is an anachronism. I cannot in any way understand them in any way, shape, or form at any given point in time. They are just as likely to lose to Ipswich 4-0 as they are to beat Liverpool tomorrow.
You guys signed a couple of players, though. I mean,
sort of.
It wasn't nothing.
They're loans. Both of them are loans.
Sure, but that's okay.
Matisse Tell somehow still signed with Spurs after telling them like 4 days ago, no, I don't want to date you. But then they were like, okay, fine, I'll date you for 6 months. Like,
Tell could be a real one. You never know. Like,
if he's a real one, he's not. If he's a real one, he's going to reject that purchase option and get more money from someone else.
Well, but you always have the memories. Just look at Gareth Bale.
No, that's not the same thing.
I know it's not the same thing.
Gareth Bale was a wonderful player for Tottenham for several years. Played in the Tottenham Academy, and he played for Southampton, didn't he? He went from Southampton to Tottenham. Anyway, like I said, I hope my wonderful Dutch boy Mickey is available for 90 minutes for this match. That's all I can say.
That's really what matters.
For Tottenham to have any chance in this game, that's really what matters. Yeah. Because if it's Ben Davies and Archie Gray playing center back tomorrow, I might start drinking early. Anyway, that's really all I have to that's all I have to look for. What do you have to look for this week?
I have nothing. I have nothing. I just want MLS to start.
Please God.
Because I can't do preseason games. I can't do all the the talking around it and everything. I just want it to start. I can't wait for it to start. Looking forward to being able to go watch real life soccer games. Since I'm an old dude now and my kids are growing, like I don't get to go watch my kids play anymore, and so it's been a while since I've been to a soccer game. And I used to, in past years, it was not uncommon for me to literally attend a dozen soccer games in a week. And so I'm kind of jonesing. So I'm ready to get going.
Yeah, you need your fix.
I do. I need it. Yep.
All right. Well, hopefully that fix is coming soon. There is obviously a home match on the 18th. You can watch some preseason, man. I mean, just get after it. You can try to watch CONCACAF Champions Cup, but it might get kicked for a Big East basketball game. So
yeah, that too.
Anyway. All right. Well, on that note,
thanks, Fox.
yeah, definitely. And on that note, I'm Drew. He's Cody. We will talk to y'all next week.
Go Sporting.